Wasn't that a great video about George Washington Carver and rhizobium? I really like that video. It explains everything about rhizobium very simply. So here are some rhizobium nodes, and you can see they're definitely not microscopic. If you get a chance to go to a fresh market and look for some peanuts that have been pulled right up out of the soil and still have their roots attached, you can actually see the rhizobium nodes on the peanut roots. So if you get a chance, do that. Nodes can also be a symptom of a bad bacteria or even a nematode infestation, because the node is just that swollen place on the roots. But in the case of rhizobium and legumes, we definitely want that. So this is a soil amendment. To amend your soil means to change your soil. So sometimes we don't have the best soil. We need to change it to make it better for our plants. This is one of our soil amendments, worm castings, which is worm poop. And this is one of the best things you can buy. This 50-pound bag costs about $11. So it's not terribly expensive, but it's super, super rich in macronutrients, super, super rich in micronutrients. It helps the texture of your soil, and by texture, I'm talking about the ability of the soil to hold moisture so that it doesn't just go sopping wet to dry, sopping wet to dry. Good textured soil will just hold moisture for the plants all the time. So this helps with your soil texture, and it also, all these nutrients are really easy to be taken up by the plant. It's just super, super nice for the plant. When we're talking about taking up nutrients for the plant, you got to remember, it's like somebody can't give you a cow and you can just eat that cow. It has to be in a form you can eat. So you could eat a steak, you could eat some ground beef, a burger, but you can't eat the cow. So when we're talking about nutrients, a lot of times it's the same with the plant. For example, with phosphorus and potassium, they can't just be taken up as pure phosphorus and potassium. They have to be put into a form, the steak or the burger, that the plant can eat. We'll talk more about that, but these are really easy nutrients for the plant to utilize. Here's some hydrated lime. So you should know something about lime already. You should know that lime is calcium, Ca with a charge of +2. And you can see that this says that lime sweetens the soil. So what does sweetening the soil mean? Sweetening the soil means to add pore space. And pore space is space in the soil that could be taken up by water or air. Okay, so if you have too much clay content, which is very tight packed together molecules, you're not going to have a lot of pore space. So that's where you want to have sand and silt. So lime actually helps create some pore space in there when you add it in. It comes from a mineral of calcium, and it creates pore space. The other thing that it does is it makes your soil more alkaline. So down here in the South, we have a problem with our soil being too acidic usually. So this will actually raise your pH, take you to the higher, a little bit higher pH. So if you're down around a 6, put down some lime and it can actually take you up to the 6.4, 6.8, whatever. So this is a very small bag of lime that you can get and put in a little flower garden, or you can get bigger bags, or you can get dump truck loads. So this is iron. Iron is going to be one of our micronutrients. And you can see right here, it says it's a soil acidifier, just like sulfur. So we would probably not really want to put down too much iron. But when you have hydrangeas, if you change the pH, you can actually change the color of your hydrangeas. So iron can help with that, or if you have an acidophilic plant. But this is just to show you, even though we probably wouldn't use it too much, unless we had a plant that just specifically really liked a lot of iron, that these things do exist out there. There's hundreds and hundreds of soil amendments. Azaleas also like more acidic soil, gardenia. So there are some acidophilic plants that are very desirable. Peat moss. So peat moss is a really good amendment to the soil because it's organic matter, provides just lots and lots of nutrients. This is basically pure organic matter, pure composted dinosaurs here. This really, really helps with texture, which, remember I said texture is the soil's ability to retain moisture, retain water, so the roots can take up as it needs all the time. Sorry, I don't know what those little dingings are. But anyway, peat moss can be used for a small area, but it's not really for like a whole garden. It's definitely not for a field. It's for smaller places. It's very expensive. And also there are some ethical concerns about mining for peat moss. Remember I said this is basically composted dinosaurs, and when it's actually mined. The peat moss bogs are mined, and that does release carbon into the atmosphere. And right now with all of the greenhouse gas concerns, there are some ethical concerns about this. And is it actually a renewable resource? Bone meal. Guess what bone meal is made of? Bone meal is actually a byproduct of slaughter. Bone meal is actually made of ground up bones. So would you think that would be good in calcium? You certainly would, but actually the main component that is in bone meal is phosphorus. So it does have calcium, but phosphorus is really what we're looking for when you add bone meal. I don't know if you ever heard the little wives' tale about planting your catfish bones. When you have a catfish fry, plant your catfish bones in the rose gardens. Well, that's because you're giving the soil a lot of phosphorus. So it's probably not a bad idea. But this is already broken down to where the plants can take up the phosphorus and a little bit of calcium. So this is good for a lot of flowers that really like phosphorus, and a lot of flowers like phosphorus to have so that they can have really bright colors. You don't want to put too much in it though, because too much phosphorus can actually inhibit the plant's ability to take up nutrients. So you do want to do a soil test before you do any amendments. And also decide which plants you want. Find out what those plants need before you put too much in it. You can always take your soil test to the the extension agency. Every county has an extension agency which will do a soil test for you for free. So look up your county extension agency. Blood meal. So guess what blood meal is made of? Blood meal is actually made of blood. Ground up blood and blood that's been processed for the plants to easily take it up. So it's a great fertilizer. It has our top 3 macronutrients in it. Do you remember what those are called, or what those are? NPK. So blood meal is really great for all 3 NPK. It's actually highest in nitrogen. Nitrogen is really important for plants. So this is probably good for a smaller area. It's not really what you'd want to put out in a field or anything like that. Not really sure why you'd even choose blood meal, because there's a lot of other nitrogen supplements out there, nitrogen amendments. But at any rate, this is just to show you how many things are really out there. So let's talk about a couple of things. Well, let me see what my next slide is. Oh, okay, here we go. Fertilizer, very important. So fertilizer, when you look at a bag of fertilizer, you're always going to see these 3 numbers. You can see 4, 10, 6, or 7, 22, 8, or you might have a 10, 10, 10. So a fertilizer is always going to be called by its number, which represents NPK. This is what percentage of this bag is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Now, remember how I said that phosphorus and potassium couldn't really be taken up by themselves, because that'd be like the plant trying to eat a cow, and we got to make it into a steak. So we've got a total nitrogen, 4% of this bag. Phosphate is how you get phosphorus, and potash is how you get your potassium. So there we go. So what else is in that bag? So if we have only 4%, 10%, and 6% are NPK, what else is in there? Well, there's going to be some things to make this easily spreadable, possibly some micronutrients. So there are some other ingredients. But over here, 7% nitrogen, 22% phosphorus, 8% potassium. So why would you choose which one? Maybe your soil, you do your soil test and you have a higher need. You have a plant you're planting that has a higher need for something, and your soil is too low in that, but everything else is fine. So here we've got a 12-4-4. So that would definitely be highest in nitrogen. And there's actually fertilizers that's all nitrogen. Then over here, we've got one that's basically just all potassium, right? And let's see if we can read how the potassium comes. It says soluble, well, you can't read that, soluble potash. All right. So those are all my slides, but I do want to come back and talk about some other things that are in your soil. So now we've talked about macronutrients, we've talked about soil amendments. I want to talk about a few other things that are in your soil. So come back, see me next video.